You've come to the right place if you're looking to create, launch, and scale a high-value online training program. I'm your guide, Chris Badgett. I'm the co-founder of LifterLMS, the most powerful learning management system for WordPress. Stay to the end. I've got something special for you. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome back to another episode of LMS Cast. I'm joined by a special guest. Her name is Barbara Thomason. She's from joy-circles.com, and she helps facilitators and the people they're helping help preteens with self-confidence, reading, all kinds of skills. But first, welcome to the show, Barbara.
Well, thank you, Chris. Thanks for the invitation to come share.
Yeah, I'm so excited to chat with you today. It's cool to build an online business, but it's also, in my opinion, even better to create a positive impact in the world. Let's get to the root of it. What is social emotional learning, which is part of the Joy Circles program?
Sure. Well, social emotional learning has an acronym like a lot of things do. So I may refer to it as SEL.
Okay.
And social emotional learning's been around actually since the 60s, but has had a recent rebirth out of need, mostly. Some people think of it in terms of character development, but I prefer the SEL moniker because it's more descriptive of what happens. It is a child learning to understand better their own emotions, understanding themselves and how they interact with others. It helps them as they move into those very special developmental stages and how they interact with the wider world. So it essentially better prepares them for the world of work, world of relationships. So it's very important and important that educators learn to recognize its importance.
So what happens, I like to keep it positive, but what happens when there's, stunted development in social emotional learning? Like how does it kind of play out and create challenges in a child's life?
Well, I think it's been obvious in recent years because what we've noticed has been the result of COVID isolation. Mm-hmm. When young ones have not had the social interaction, they struggle a little bit with coming back to society in learning situations and in working with the team and collaborating. They tend to become very techno-dependent, and I think that it takes time to begin to assimilate back into their age group. So social and emotional skills are critical for academic learning. So a young one who isn't really comfortable with themselves and each other must be comfortable. They have to be comfortable with themselves in order to be able to be comfortable with learning. So, and research bears this out, that young ones who score high, I guess you could say, on SEL, make greater gains in the academic areas such as math and reading and sciences. So it's just very important for all over development.
You mentioned like a scoring system, or what are examples that would cause a higher score in SEL?
Well, I'll speak to a specific series of studies. There was a Dr. Gerlach, and some of his research has been most cited. And what he found is, of course, there were certain gains after social emotional learning. I think he looked at several hundred SEL programs of different types. And of course, the children that were exposed to SEL learning as opposed to control groups certainly saw gains in social emotional learning parameters. But what they didn't expect, but they did see, was an 11% increase in academic gains. So that was rather amazing. And a wonderful finding, because what that communicates to educators is that it is worthwhile to spend instructional time on social emotional learning, because it's a wonderful expenditure of time with a payout at the end for academia.
Awesome. I love the name Joy Circles. Tell us about the name and the circles.
Well, that was both inspiration and I guess you could say a little bit of science too. There are a couple of researchers, and of course their names have escaped me, but I have their book on the shelf, that produced programming called the Circle Way. And they have programs around the world that are a lot of them for adults. And they have shown how important the circle is, that is, putting people in circles. And of course, they go back to almost prehistoric times to demonstrate how circles are used in adult gatherings, and how when you put people in a circle, everyone is on equal footing. Everyone has a say, everyone is heard. And so this concept was extremely important to me, in that when you enter into the whole process of social emotional learning, it's important that you establish a circle in order for children to build trust with whoever is working with them in facilitation. You might notice that whether it's therapists or school counselors, when they're dealing with a child who may be unregulated or in trauma, they tend to get down on the level of the child. They may kneel down or even sit down eye to eye with the child. It's the same concept with circles. Everyone is seated on the floor, or if, excuse me, if everyone is in a chair, so is the facilitator. So everyone is equal, everyone is heard. There are activities within the program that enable the circle to really be borne out. There's movement to music, so we're doing that in a circle. There are times based on Cliff Derby's program called Heart Talk, where you have a heart and you pass it around the circle, and whoever is holding the heart has the privilege to speak at that moment about their deepest feelings. So that is a use of the circle, as well as, and there are other things, of course, that we do within the circle, but the use of the word circle is very critical. Joy, of course, I think is inherent in the name of the program, because that is, an intended ultimate outcome. It was a perfect marriage of two concepts, really, to create this program. And I have to say, it was somewhat divinely inspired.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. Love the name and the backstory there. You mentioned therapists and perhaps guidance counselors and educators before. Who is the best fit for the Joy Circles Facilitator certification program? Because you're going to the educator, not directly to the student. Who's the best fit?
Well, that's a great question, because I think there are personal and skill characteristics that make the best facilitator, not necessarily a job title. So there may be someone without all of those credentials that could be a gifted facilitator.
Like a
But
camp counselor, perhaps.
yes, I mean, it could be someone without an advanced degree. It could be someone with an associate's degree. It could be someone with no degree, although that's, I think, a little tougher to establish. But if I were to go into a school district, I would most likely start with guidance counselors, simply because they are most likely to get it most easily, get the concept. The school social worker is most likely to understand this. For the most part, they have had probably 25 to 35 to 50% of the learning that I am offering in the facilitation program. For them, a lot of it is repeat or review. for them. So they are wonderful candidates for this program. Teachers, only if maybe they're in a special situation where they have instructional time to do it and they have, the skill sets and understanding. But for the most part, they are very focused on the instruction, the area of instruction that they are required to deliver. And they're usually under a lot of stress to deliver it. And that's not a good place to be in order to deliver joy circles and social emotional learning.
All right. Well, tell us about the desire to and the story of putting this online and how you made it to the point where you wanted to have a website for this and create the online certification program for the facilitators.
Well, the Joy Circles program itself, what is delivered to the children, of course, is not online. That is a live program. But it was important to me that the facilitator training be available really around the world, certainly across the nation, so that the program could be delivered widely as quickly as possible. So that was the way to do it, was to place it online and make it easily accessed and make the interaction between those of us that deliver the program as impactful as possible, and make it self-paced for the learner, as well as we could punctuate this class with periods where we could have live sessions. So built into it, or a couple of times when we would have what you might call check-in sessions and coaching sessions with those that are going through the program. And at the very end, there's a capstone session where they would do a practice facilitation, with a live group. But it was important to be able to deliver this in a widespread way. It's also wonderful to be able to edit the program as we go. I attended a all-day conference yesterday delivered by the Texas Teacher Counseling Association, and went to a number of wonderful workshops and got some great content, and thought as I came back yesterday, I need to put that in my facilitation program so I can go in and edit happily, change the program, and it's done. I don't have to go back to a printer and have a lot of expense, have any expense at all to make those edits.
Tell us about the instructional design aspect of it. Like, how did you figure out how to structure the course and the content? I know you said that it's awesome that you can make it better as you go, but how did you kind of first encapsulate the program?
Well, a little spoiler alert, I have a master's. Well, that's been tough. I mean, I'm a new launch.
Yeah.
So my best way is, for example, going to a professional conference yesterday. I reach out to school districts one by one and attempt to make appointments either with an instructional leader, whoever's heading up the counselors, and just have that conversation, see where they are in their SEL programming. We talk about who would be ideal facilitators, just that sort of thing. It's just the outreach. I also have an e-newsletter. And so I have a pretty robust list of schools across the state of Texas right now. So reaching out to them through my e-newsletter, which is quarterly. I had an info webinar in January and invited quite a few people to that. So it's just a lot of those ways, that you outreach to your publics.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I call that the ground game. You have to get out there and
Pound the pavement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one conversation at a time. You mentioned checking in with districts on where their cell programming is. Is it already kind of part of the flow where educational institutions have some kind of social emotional learning mandate or process and flow, or is it sometimes a new thing?
As to how far they have come with social emotional learning.
For the other folks trying to impact within the educational system, who's kind of like the decision maker on the program? You mentioned districts, but then there's individual guidance counselors. Is it more likely that the kind of district lead gets buy-in and then encourages their staff to join, or is it more likely a specific guidance counselor, as an example, that kind of gets really into it, and I call that land and expand, and then others start getting interested? Which is it, top down or bottom up?
That's the question. That's how I was going to respond. It depends on if it's top down or bottom up. Sometimes a new superintendent comes into his position and wants to make his mark. And if his mark is one that is, pure academics, then social emotional learning may go by the wayside. And that's what I have seen in the very district I'm sitting in. While another may be one that is very open to listening to his professional staff and will take their recommendations. And if they believe strongly in, a sound social emotional learning program, then he or she will say, let's invest in it. So it just depends on what kind of leadership is there and how willing they are to listen and take a try on a program.
Awesome. You mentioned, creating impactful training. What are some examples of how to make the facilitator training more impactful than, let's say, other things that are out there? And with your background as a facilitator and instructional designer, how does one do that?
Well, I think that in addition to having good content, and one of the things that I try and do, it's not always the fun part, is having sound resources and cite, the sources, but to also use your tool for what do you call them? It's like homework, and use the tool for creating like quizzes. And so you're getting feedback for each, unit or lesson, if you choose to do it that way, so that they're, really sort of assimilating that information and trying themselves out on it. I think too, the more that you can have more interaction during the learning, the better it can be. So an example might be a lesson assignment where they join together with one or two other learners, to work on a project, a group project, or they have to go out and do some research on their own and, report back on that. Something that's a little more interactive than just reading and, spewing back information, I think is going to be more impactful. Knowing too that the learning is something that is going to make a difference in how they perform on the job. And I think just pointing that out throughout the lesson, for example, giving them tools on how to work with the child who may lose control, during a session, and, why they are that way, and, tools that they can use to bring that child back into, into self-control, those kinds of things.
What's an example of a tool like that? When a child loses control, and how can you help?
Well, there's a model, and I'm not going to go into the model, Chris, because it's not an attractive model, but it's called the polyvagal theory. And it basically shows where we move neurologically in our brain, where we start out maybe feeling pretty good, and we're in a certain part of our brain, and then we go into the fight or flight mode or freeze mode, and we call that our reptilian brain. And that's where a child goes if they may be a child who has been subjected to abuse or neglect or any other form of trauma. They go there more readily. And so through acts of ensuring trust and so forth, you can move them from that part of their brain into a more calming place. There was a strategy I learned yesterday, and just, I'm going to build this into my program. A lot of parents learn how to conduct time out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, a child who has been neglected or abused, time out would be very problematic for them, because what they don't need to be felt like they're rejected. They need to be brought in, and feel closer and connected to a trusting human being. So this particular theorist called it time in. And I just thought it was a beautiful thing. And she demonstrates how she brings the child who has acted out, into a chair fairly close to her. She continues to do her thing, whether it's grading papers or, cleaning up at a sink or whatever, and allows the child to maybe do some art or something, but be thinking about how he or she might have performed that behavior differently. Not, decide what you did wrong, but how might you have done that differently if you had a do-over? And then when you have decided that, when you figured that out, just say, I'm ready. And then when the child says, I'm ready, then get down on their level, eye level, and hear what they have to say. And it says, great, let's try it that way. And I just thought that was a beautiful strategy to bring maybe a child that is at high emotionality down to a calm level where they can move from that panic area of their brain to calm thinking, logical area of their brain, and have learning take place. So I just thought that was a beautiful strategy I'd never heard before yesterday.
Time in. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Where does your passion and motivation come for this subject matter and impact you want to make in the world?
Well, it's funny. When this lightning bolt inspiration came to me, I did not want to do this. I've had businesses before, parents and all of those issues that children in this age group are just exploring and dealing with. So on a micro level, that's where I want to go with it. On the macro level, I do hope to bring other professionals in to help me expand this business and to help it grow. I'd like to see it in schools across the country. And, that's my vision, to make a difference across the country.
That's amazing. Switching back to the instructional design hat, if somebody is, working on something similar or tangentially related, I'm just curious, did you create the physical binder of lesson plans first or the online course? And then there's also this reading list. Which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Like, what would you advise somebody?
Well, I created the program, the lesson plans first.
Okay.
But I had in the back of my mind sort of this outline for the facilitator program. So the lesson plans are one thing, but the facilitator training is, why do we use circles? Why do we use models? That's another thing that makes us unique, in that we use graphical and word models. No other program does this. That helps bring concepts to the young ones that will remain in their mind. There's one model, for example, called Sarge, and it's this ugly kind of sergeant graphic. And it is about the type of communication style that you might hear from a sergeant or another kind of authority. But it's necessary in an emergency or a certain situation. So sometimes children have a hard time distinguishing, between what's appropriate and what's inappropriate communication. So this is a kind of communication model that we teach them. And then we talk about other kinds of communication like I messages and how to structure an appropriate I statement. I feel concerned when you talk to me in that tone of voice. So all of this is, and there are more models that are in my head that need to be developed as we move into 6th and 7th grade, levels. So program first, then the facilitator training will evolve as well.
I want to try to extract some wisdom from your experience around a lesson plan for for somebody who's not trained as a teacher. Like, what is a lesson plan?
It's a flexible script. And it'd be hard for you to see for me to show you, but it provides a theme, for this particular day or period of time together. It provides,
like bullying as an example.
Well, like communication or leadership or self-management or visioning. And it provides maybe a list of materials and equipment that you need to gather together to have for that session so that it helps them get organized. And then it has the list of activities. You start with movement to music, and Joy Circles has its own recordings of music. We've secured the services of a local musician who has provided a soundtrack for us. So it's very, upbeat, positive music that he's created for us. So we have movement to music. And of course, we've taught them in the facilitator training how to do this, in a way that's open and fun. And then we move right into what we call soda straw breathing, where they transition from that movement to music that helps them focus down to a calming state where they might even have a soda straw. And we teach them how to breathe in through their nose and out as if they're breathing through a soda straw. And we do that several times. So it's self-calming. And then we go right into reading, where we are in the novels, and they take turns. If a child doesn't want to read, maybe they're not comfortable with their reading, they can pass. Or we might say, well, why don't you read the title of this chapter so that they're comfortable with just a few words. And we reinforce that, great, that was helpful, thanks, Stephen. And then after we read whatever the chapter is that we've decided to do that day, we have our discussions. Well, why do you think she ran out of the classroom, in that chapter? Have you ever felt like doing that, and why? So we take whatever the action was and bring it down to their personal level. And then we might introduce our models for the day. And a lot of times they'll track with the action of the book. And then we'll have some kind of a closing circle as well. So it depends on the amount of time that the hosting organization has allowed, if it's 30 minutes or 60 minutes or 20 minutes, how much we can accomplish. But that's kind of what a lesson looks like. And this scripts it for you, but we allow lots of flexibility for a facilitator once they've been trained to make adjustments. There may be an activity like creating emoji sticks so that they have a collection of emoji sticks that shows different kinds of emotions that we would use throughout our semester together. So all kinds of things that the lesson plans can provide them with ideas. And then we welcome them to submit their own ideas so that they can be shared among our facilitator community.
Wow. I love that. I think what I'm hearing, the really big thing there when creating a learning experience is multiple modalities, in the body, breathing, music through the ears, reading, um, arts and crafts. It's not, like you said earlier, it's not just receiving content and spitting it back on the test. It's what
Mhm.
makes an engaging learning experience.
Yes.
Um, so I say, like one of the frameworks or models that I have for people who create these kinds of online learning platforms, so it can be challenging or difficult, is because you kind of got to be five people in once. You have to be a subject matter expert. You have to be a teacher slash instructional designer. You have to be a community builder, both to, get clients and then also inside your program. You have to be an entrepreneur. You have to like start a business and accept money through the internet and do marketing. And you have to be a technologist who can, work with hardware and software and websites and everything. You've put all those pieces together, both yourself, and you mentioned earlier you had a webmaster that helps on the tech side. What advice do you have for somebody that's kind of struggling with having to wear those five hats? That's what I call my model, is the five hats. Because you were able to get it launched. Like, what advice do you have for wearing all the hats?
I would say, get the help you need.
Yeah.
Retain those things that you know and love, and try as much as your budget allows to delegate the rest. If you don't like doing your bookkeeping, try and find somebody else to do it. If you don't like building a website, it's easy to find people to do that. I have the most wonderful web people, and they were not terribly expensive. And I have them on a retainer now to rescue me when I need them to do things on a month-to-month basis.
How
So,
do you find that person? I'm just curious because people ask all the time.
what's that online shopping place?
Upwork or
Yeah,
Freelancer?
it's Upwork. Yeah,
Yeah.
I found
Okay.
them on Upwork. Great, great, great place to go. Yeah, that's where I found them. And it wasn't necessarily that they were the lowest price or anything. It was kind of a gut feeling of a good match, and I was right. So I would just say that, keep the things that you're good at and that you love to do, and try and carve out the other things, and see if you can find others to do. There are things that I really am ready to delegate, but I'm not ready budget wise. So I've created a job description. I'm poised and ready to bring somebody else on as quickly as I can when the time is right. But the time isn't quite right. I'm just ready.
It sounds like also the having your strong vision, mission, and purpose kind of helps carry you through all those challenges. And what I'm hearing too is the team aspect of it. You even mentioned, like in your vision, to bring in other subject matter experts to add even more value to the platform, which is
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah, I look forward to that time. It's also a challenge too. I mean, um, it gets messier when you bring other people in.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great conversation, Barbara. She's at joy-circles.com. What's the best way for people to connect with you, and particularly if somebody's working in education and social work or guidance, what should they do to connect with you more?
Well, they can find me through the website. I have an email, bthomason@joy-circles.com. I'm on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, and just reach out.
Awesome. Well, Barbara, thank you for being a shining example of what I call an education entrepreneur. creating a positive impact in the world and using LifterLMS as part of your tech stack. I really appreciate it, and I wish you all the best on your learning platform journey. And thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Take care. Keep up the good work.
All right. Hang on for a sec. I'm just going to stop the live stream here.